نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الطلاق مرتان فإمساكم بمعروف أو تسريح بإحسان ولا يحل لكم أن تأخذوا مما آتيتموهن شيئا إلا أن يخافا ألا يقيما حدود الله فإن خفتم ألا يقيما حدود الله فلا جناح عليهما فيما افتدت به تلك حدود الله فلا تعتدوها ومن يتعد حدود الله فأولئك هم الظالمون فإن طلقها فلا تحل له من بعد حتى تنكح زوجا غيره فإن طلقها فلا جناح عليهما أن يتراجعا إن ظنا أن يقيما حدود الله وتلك حدود الله يبينها لقوم يعلمون. Dear honorable friends, the verses that we have started I'll increase the detention. The verses that have been recited to you and the verses that we had commenced with last week were to do with the rulings of talaq. A couple of rulings were mentioned last week, and in these verses and the verses still to come, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes mention in more detail with regards to various aspects of talaq, divorce. Before we do the actual translation and the tafseer of these verses, we first of all need to understand the philosophy behind nikah and talaq in Islam. First of all, we all know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent Nabi Kareem sallallahu ta'ala wasallam with a pristine guide with regards to every aspect of a person's life, be it his domestic life, his social life, his financial life, his life within the home, outside the home, with friends or foe. With all aspects of life, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us guidance with regards how things should be done. In this, certain things have been made halal, certain things have been made haram. Some practices of Jahiliyyah have been eradicated, and some practices which were not harmful to a person's deen and iman, they have been maintained. Prior to Islam, we know there was no such thing as a proper nikah. Either there was no such thing as nikah at all, or if there was nikah, the nikah would be done in a manner which would in reality be against the Islamic way of nikah. Either people didn't do nikah at all and just fulfilled their desires in a haram way, or there were those people who did believe in nikah, but the nikah was also a very strange way. For example, the nikah prevailed during the times of the Arabs wherein the male, he marries as many times as he wants, and he'll divorce as many times as he wants. The female, she has a desire, she has she was utilized more of a merchandise, she would be shared amongst people. There's one form of nikah wherein if the male himself could not produce any children, then the wife, the female, she had a choice of consummating with whoever she wanted to, and then the child would be linked to the actual husband himself. The Persians, according to them, marriage was such, there was no such thing as mahram and ghair mahram. Nobody was haram for anybody, which meant that a father would marry his daughter, the son would marry their mother. This was prevailed amongst the Persians. Brothers and sisters would get married, close, very close, intimate family would also marry each other, and they would even boast upon it. So if the child married his own mother or father, they would boast upon such type of marriages. So there was no guidance at all. And these were the types of marriages that would prevail prior to Islam. So in Islam, we had such thing as nikah. Now nikah itself, we know, is not just an external transaction between a male and a female, because wherever nikah has been mentioned, it's been termed as an aqd, as a transaction, because there's great similarities between a normal transaction and that of nikah. In nikah also, a mahar is stipulated, and in a normal transaction also, a figure, a price is stipulated. So it is a form of transaction. Why is it a transaction? Because when a person makes a transaction with another person, he makes a deal with him. And in that deal they agree that they will follow certain principles, they will be good with each other, they'll be fair with each other, they'll be truthful with each other. And then something may happen wherein then that transaction breaks up. So in nikah also is a form of transaction, where the male and female make a transaction that they're going to remain loyal with each other forever, and that they will be as a partnership. The difference is, however, that a normal transaction can be easily nullified, wherein basically the parties just say, that's it, our transaction, our deal is over, we go our separate ways. And immediately they can go and start off whatever other businesses they want to. But in nikah, the nikah transaction, when it's broken up also, is broken up in a specific method. Now nikah itself, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained nikah. Nabi Karim sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has stressed upon nikah. The reason for this is because this is safeguardance for a person. So nikah isn't just to do with the external form. A person now lives with another person of the opposite sex, obviously not of the same sex, there's no nikah there at all. So John doesn't become halal for Paul, etc. But it is an ibadat. So nikah, although it is termed as a transaction, but nikah itself is an ibadat. Allama ibn Nujaym rahimahullah in his Bahr al-Raik mentions in quite detail with regards to the Islamic position of nikah. And one of the things he mentions is that it is an ibadat. And it is an ibadat which is greater than nafal salat. He says that if a husband spends his time with his wife, he gains more reward in that than performing nafal salat. And the reason he gives behind it is because Nabi Karim sallallahu alayhi wa sallam stressed greatly upon marriage. So marriage is a sunnat, such a sunnat that Nabi Karim sallallahu alayhi wa sallam maintains throughout his life, and he gave a lot of stress upon the importance of marriage. Whereas nafal is just nafal. Sunnat has more importance than that of nafal. A person discards any nafal, he won't be questioned with regards to it, but a person discards sunnat, he may be questioned with regards to it. So the position of a sunnat is much greater than that of a nafal. Hence he mentions that nikah is also an ibadat, and he mentions that in the eyes of the fuqaha, a person gains more reward in spending time with his wife than he does in performing nafal ibadat. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasn't just made nikah an ibadat, something that is virtuous with regards to deeds, but it is something which obviously a person fulfills his desires in it. As I mentioned, whether it was in Tafseer or one of the Jummahs recently, where Hakim al-Mutanwi rahimahullah mentions that the wife dil behlane ki saman hote hai, that the wives Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted the male's wives so that they are there in order to bring enjoyment to the heart of the husbands. So when a male and female gets together in a form of nikah, and they become a means of compassion and love for each other, they remove each other's stress and hardships and difficulties, they share each other's pains and hardships, and in this way man finds great comfort in his wife. The unique nikah system is so great that this is the only system in which two strangers become so close to each other in a correct method. Where you find when the boy and girl get married to each other, the boy may be of a total different country, different language, different background, and the girl is also of different background. And now just because of the nikah, how two total different families get together and become one family. And this union now is such a strong and very strong and firm union between the two. Nikah is also such that you'll find that prior to nikah, those two individuals who are totally haram for each other, just because of a few methods taking place, now they both become halal for each other. Until they both die, they become so halal for each other that nobody else has the same rights than those two with regards the intimacy between the two. That's how halal they become for each other. Two strangers who prior to nikah had no ta'alluq, no connection at all, had no feelings for each other, now immediately after nikah they have so much connection between the two. The boy and the girl prior to marriage, if the boy was told that this girl who lives wherever, she's ill or something happened to her, it wouldn't affect him the least bit. It wouldn't, so big deal, so what? It wouldn't affect him the least bit. But immediately after nikah, if he's told to him that the same person has just a slight headache, end of the world for him. How much now it feels to him how things change. Just through the union of nikah, how things change. That is when it's done according to the sunnah. We know our nikahs are such that everything is done prior to nikah, after nikah there's nothing left. The only thing left after nikah now is divorce. This is our nikahs, isn't it? The only thing left now is divorce. Because prior to that they just break up, they couldn't do divorce, you only do divorce after nikah. So that's the only thing that's left, everything else is done. So once nikah is done, they think what is left now, so let's divorce. Yes, you find there's so many cases, and I've dealt with so many cases where it's love marriages, where they've been going out with each other, they've been head over heels, loved with each other, not long after the marriage, and now they divorce. Whereas it was supposed to be love marriage. So those people who say no, it has to be a love marriage, boy and girl has to meet and get to know each other beforehand and all these type of things, but you find those are the ones that end up in divorce. Whereas those marriages where boy and girl do not get to know each other, they just meet each other once when it's the time to do so. After that, if there's any communication, it is done via a mahram, etc. That type of nikah you find it lasts forever. Why? Because the blessings of the sunnah is that type of union, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala naturally places love and affection between the two. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions mawaddatan wa rahma, that the purpose of nikah is that love and compassion is created, then a person will find that if he sticks to the sunnah method, he may think to himself, I need to get to know her, at least I need to know who I'm going to live the rest of my life with. She might think the same, I need to know his likes, his dislikes, what type of person it is. We need to at least go out a few times, meet a few times, chat a few times. We need to do these type of things. Otherwise, how are we going to learn to love each other? Whereas if a person, but this is when obviously the boy does go to see the girl, and through his choice he accepts her, and through her choice she accepts. Obviously where it's a forced marriage, you don't expect a forced marriage to work out, obviously, because in Islam there's no such thing as forced marriages. Here is a case wherein the boy sees the girl, he speaks to her for a while, and he'll only say yes if he likes what he saw, or if he likes what he heard. The girl, she also has her own choice. She can say yes or she can decline, she can say no. Out of her own choice, both of them agree to get married to each other. Thereafter, they remain away from each other. So at least there's some form of excitement in when the day of the nikah. So when now the nikah takes place, now all the enjoyment is there, a new adventure, a new venture for them to explore with each other. And you'll find through the barakat of nikah, and you'll find wherever this type of sunnah nikah does, with proof I can mention to you, that if there's no ta'alluq at all prior to marriage, the moment nikah is done, automatically a lot of love and affection is placed between the two. Whereas there was no connection at all with that person, you only saw them on that one occasion and that's it, but automatically through the barakat of the nikah being according to sunnat method, there's great union between the two, great love and affection between the two in nikah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first of all has ordained something as nikah. Now we all know the importance of nikah. In one hadith, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam describes a male and a female who doesn't have a partner in marriage as miskeen. Nabi Kareem mentions that male who doesn't have a wife is a miskeen, that female who doesn't have a husband is a miskeen. Sahaba asked, even if he is rich, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentions that even if he is rich but he doesn't have a wife, he's a miskeen, he's a pauper. And even if she is rich but she doesn't have a husband, she is also a miskeen. This is how Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has described it too. And you find also whenever there's mention of nikah and marriage and that, and if there's a group of those who are married and those who aren't, you find those who are not married do normally look like miskeens also. And they feel like miskeens because they know that we're not in the club yet. So there's not a smile on their faces you'll find on another person, isn't it? So as true as Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentioned, they're like miskeens. I remember one ustad of ours also, while she was studying, there were some students who were married, some who were not. So he himself, those who were not married, would look at them and say, "Bichar miskeen hai." They're still miskeen. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in a beautiful method, has joined a male and female together through the barakat of nikah. When both of them get together, they've got together in a beautiful, in a blessed method, wherein obviously one of the things of nikah is, Nabi mentioned that nikah, there should be an elan. Elan means it should be not hidden, but people should know about the nikah. People should be invited, and it's a day of joy and pleasure, not a day of hardship, a day of mourning. Although some may mourn a week or two late, but it shouldn't be that way anyway. So it's a day of great pleasure. People are happy, so much preparations take place, although it should be all within the boundaries obviously. And all these type of things happen, and in this way the male and female become halal for each other. Now as life goes on between the two, obviously there might be a case wherein they find that instead of love and affection being there between the two, things are the opposite. Wherein now a veil is placed over their eyes, wherein the husband now can't see or recognize the qualities, the good characteristics of his wife. Or a veil is placed over the wife wherein she cannot see the good qualities of the husband, due to which now there's great unrest and hardship and difficulties between the two. Or it might become a case wherein both the thoughts and mentality is totally separate to each other. One's on one highway, the other one's on another highway. One wants to reach Allah, go towards Allah, one wants to go towards shaitan. Or they just can't find any compatibility between the two. Now for this also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us a way out. Not like other trends, like other religions, wherein once now a person marries, there's no way out at all. Prior to Islam we find this is what was prevailed, that the male would marry, and if he didn't like his wife, he just keep her aside. There would be no way of her freedom for her. Or it would be a case wherein, as we'll be doing in the verses, why these verses were revealed, that there were those who would divorce their wives, and within the iddat period they would take them back again. And then after a while he'd divorce again, take them back, divorce, and in that period he'd divorce her over 100 times. He'd divorce her over 100 times, but he wouldn't release her. Within the iddat he'll just take her back again just to keep her. He wouldn't have any intention of keeping good ties with her, but he would just keep her inside. So this is the type of marriage that was prevailed, the type of system that was prevailed during the times prior to Islam. Many religions also you find wherein they would also be faced wherein if a male and female were together in marriage, then they wouldn't be able to separate from each other. The only way was if one of the two passes away. That would be the only way out. There would be no such thing as divorce. Even amongst the Roman Catholics, there's no such thing as divorce from right. Or the Protestants or something wherein the only time they can divorce is if one dies or if one fornicates, something to that extent. So even in religion also there was no way out. Now Islam and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala greatly dislikes talaq. أَبْغَضُ الْحَلَالِ إِنَّ اللَّهِ is talaq. The most disliked thing, halal thing in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talaq, the most disliked. It is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dislikes. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam also disliked it. In the hadith, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentioned that never mind Jannat, even the fragrance of Jannat is haram for that female who seeks and who demands a divorce without a valid reason. So divorce is greatly disliked. But at the same time, it hasn't been totally ruled out. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has still left the option open for the males and female to separate with each other when things do not work out. But just the way great deal of effort and things took place in the getting together, in the same way talaq, when it occurs, it isn't something that should be just given and just broken off. The marriage is something that is very sacred, a union that is very strong. And that unity, that union should not just be broken off how a person desires. That's what you find with regards to divorce. The right of divorcing has been granted to the male, to the husband. Because his characteristics is different compared to the female. Women are more sensitive, they haste more, their feelings are much stronger than that of a male. A male, he can have more patience, he'll still undertake more hardship than a female, he'll be able to control himself. The nature of a female is such that if the right of divorce was granted to her, and only Allah knows how many times she'll divorce and get married, divorce. As the mood swings and various phases of her life will go, she'll be just divorcing, marrying, and whatever. Any small thing happens and that's it, she would probably be just divorcing the husband. That's why this right hasn't been granted to her. And as we know that they are inferior than men in mentality wise, in intellect wise. So obviously they wouldn't think as hard and plan as much as a male would do at the time. So this right has been granted to the male. But it's been granted to him in such a manner that it isn't a right that he just utilizes whenever he wants. And as well, along with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granting this right to the husband, to the male, He's also granted the female that there are options which she can utilize, which we'll be doing in the verses inshallah, wherein she can also release herself from the marriage. Now this right which the male has is a right which is the last resort, not the first resort, that you divorce and then you try and make things work out. But it is the absolute last resort. That's why the other verses in the Quran which we will do in its time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us great advice that when things do not work out, then the male and female first, they should try and work things out themselves. If things don't work out, they should separate from each other in the house. Not that they move out in the house, one sleeps in a separate room, another in another room. They should separate from each other. Then still if things don't work out, then they should call somebody else, a neutral person, or somebody from the girl's side, somebody from the male side. So get somebody from outside, somebody else to come in and try and arbitrate between the two. After all these methods and steps are taken, then still we find that there's no way of things working out. Then only Islam says that now the two should divorce, should separate. So the rights of divorce which have been given is the last step that a person takes. The nikah, the moment a person marries, he shouldn't marry with the intention of divorcing. That he's going to marry and very soon he has the intention already, well things don't work out, let's divorce her. This is not what he should be thinking. At the time of marriage he should be thinking that this is it, this is that we are going to live together until death does us apart. Until then we're going to remain together and we shall work things out at all times. So a person, the last thing, meaning that he shouldn't even think of the thought of divorcing. Divorce should be the last thing in a person's mind. Unfortunately, Shoaib, sit inside. Unfortunately, we find that our case is that any small affair, any small issue that arises, that's the husband is there. Do this, do that. If you don't obey me, then I'll divorce you. I'll divorce you. Do this and I'll divorce you. Go here and I'll divorce you. Do this, I'll divorce you. Every speech, wherever he talks, he's just saying, should I divorce you? Should I divorce you? That's always the first thing on his tongue is divorce. And then what happens is any small thing, and obviously whatever's on the mind, on the thought, that's the first thing that he does. And the last thing that he's supposed to do is the first thing that he does. And then what happens is, as I mentioned previously, then the two divorce, and after divorcing, now they regret, and then they start looking around and searching for various other fatwas, or they might try and con the Mufti and change things about, thinking that as long as we get the fatwa, then everybody will be quiet. We just show people, look, we've got a fatwa from the Mufti. What they don't realize is they'll turn things around, and according to that, the Mufti just gives his fatwa according to what's presented to him. He'll give his fatwa, but that doesn't still make you halal for each other. If you, by calling the Mufti, and this is, people go to those extent. If you call the Mufti and he gives a fatwa that yes, you are halal for each other, divorce hasn't taken place, but then too they can't call Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they still will be haram for each other. So the talaq is something that is the absolute last resort. Talaq also, when it is given, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala advises us that talaq should also be given in a pacific method. Just the way the nikah was done in a pacific method, talaq should also be given in a pacific method. When such a great union has taken place, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has brought two people together, if now they do have to separate, it should be done also in a good method. In a method wherein everybody is pleased, Allah and His Rasul is also pleased. In another hadith it mentions that when a husband and wife divorces each other, when the divorce is given, it shakes the arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's how disliked it is in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But at the same time, we do need to realize is that Islam, which has moderation in it, doesn't oppress anybody, and it doesn't mean that now a person shouldn't divorce at all when things aren't working out. At times, it is better that both go their own ways. If the husband has no feelings for his wife anymore, there's no love and affection between the two, because obviously there still needs to be love and affection between the two, understanding that there should be some form of compromise, understanding between the two, then only is there hope that both of them can remain together. If now both of them don't love each other, or if from the two one absolutely doesn't want to live with the other at all, then there's no way you can force a person to live with somebody if they dislike that person, if they don't want to live with that person. So Islam gives us the way out. The best thing is that instead of the husband now, he doesn't like his wife anymore, he finds some problems in her, some issues in her, instead of him now marrying somebody else, he got his new wife now, and she just remains there as a work in the house. She now is not free to do anything herself. Islam says that you can now divorce, separate with each other, but the separation should also be done in a pacific method. So Islam also, who has advised us how to get together, has also advised us how we should separate from each other. So when talaq is done, talaq should be given in a pacific method. Now before we do all these verses, let's give you an overall view of the different types of talaq and how talaq takes place, and then inshallah we'll go into the tafseer of the verses itself. So the first thing we know is that talaq is something that is disliked in Islam. Talaq is the last resort that a person should resort to. And also we know that talaq is something which is halal. It isn't haram, it is halal. And if it comes to it, then there is no harm in a person divorcing. But now when a person divorces, he should do it in a pacific method. As we find that there are three types of talaq. One is talaqul ahsan, which is the best form of talaq. And that is wherein the husband divorces the wife in her clean period, wherein no form of sexual intercourse took place, and he gives the wife just one divorce. This is talaqul ahsan, the best form of talaq. And this is a form of talaq that Nabi Karim sallallahu alayhi wa sallam advised and told the Sahaba to do. If anybody did it contrary to that, Nabi Karim sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would become greatly angered with it, which I'll mention later on. So talaqul ahsan is where a person divorces the wife, first of all, in her clean period. The reason for this is so it doesn't lengthen her period. Because if he divorces her while she's on a period, then she has to wait for that period to end, and then once the cleanliness comes, after that she has to still wait for another 3 periods to go by. So this increases and lengthens her period. So it shouldn't be done when she's in haste. It should be done in a period where she's clean, no sexual intercourse takes place, and only one divorce, one talaq is given. So at least while she's in a waiting period, the husband still has control. He can still take her back just by making raj'at, just by taking her back in his nikah. This is talaqul ahsan, the best way of divorcing. The second is talaqul hasan, which is also a good form of divorce, but not as good as the first one. The first one is ahsan, this is hasan. Talaqul hasan is wherein a person divorces his wife 3 times, but in 3 separate clean periods. So he divorces his wife once in 1 clean period, and then after that, once the cycle goes, and next clean period he divorces a 2nd time, and then in the next clean period he divorces her for a 3rd time, wherein no sexual intercourse took place. This is talaqul hasan. This is also permissible, however it isn't as good as the first one. Because in the first one, at least after divorcing her once, even if her iddat comes to an end, she's halal, she can do what she wants, but they can still get together with each other by just simply redoing the nikah. In the second one, he still has time to take her back, but after he issues a 3rd, then obviously he can't now without doing halala, which will also come in the verses I've recited to you. The third one is talaqul bid'ah, the talaq which is greatly disliked. And a person who divorces in this manner will also be sinful. And this talaq has 3 stages, 3 types, which are greatly disliked. One is that a male divorces the wife while she is in her period, in her menstruation period. This has been greatly disliked by Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, wherein he says that what you are doing is you're lengthening her iddat, her waiting period, so you're making it difficult for her. So a person will become sinful if he divorces the wife while she is in haze. Whereas a lot of fuqaha mentioned that a person should make raj'at, he should take her back and then divorce her in a cleanliness to abstain from becoming sinful. Although a person who does divorce his wife in this period, her divorce does take place. A person shouldn't mean that because it's disliked, means that it's nullified. There are those who interpret it this way. This is incorrect. Whoever divorces his wife in that period, she will be divorced. The second category is wherein a person divorces the wife in that cleanliness in which they had sexual relationship with each other. Why this is disliked is because in that period when they had sexual relationship, there is a great chance that she might have conceived. And then if he divorces her in that same purity, then what happens is her iddah is going to be lengthened. He knows now they're going to divorce, or he's deciding to divorce her. So now if he divorces her in the same that in which he meets with her, there's a great chance that if she conceives, then now her iddah is going to be lengthened till the time she gives birth. And at the same time, it's great disheartening for the wife also if a male divorces her in the same period of time where he also met with her. So this is greatly disliked. The third is wherein a person issues 3 talaqs together, either separately or 3 together in one gathering. This is greatly disliked by Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam. On one occasion, somebody came and said regards a person that has divorced his wife 3 times in one go. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who was sat at the time, stood up out of great anger and said that, do you still mess around, play with the Quran whilst I'm amongst you? That the Quran has disliked this, and when we do the tafseer, we find out how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the wording of Allah shows us that this is greatly disliked. When He says that you meddle with the Quran whilst I'm amongst you, already you messing about with the Quran and doing things which are such greatly disliked. On seeing the anger of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, another Sahabi stood up and said that, Ya Rasulullah, shall I chop his head off? Shall I finish him off, seeing the dislike that Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam had in it? So to divorce the wife full 3 times in one gathering, this is greatly disliked by Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and a person will be sinful. Now we have to realize that all the fuqaha, all the sahaba, the tabi'een, the fuqaha, the 4 great imams, are all unanimous that if a person divorces his wife 3 times in one gathering, she is divorced. It is only the ghair muqallideen who have come out with their own interpretations, wherein they say that 3 divorce in one gathering equals only 1. Allah knows best where they got the mathematics from. This is incorrect. The Sahaba were unanimous, the Tabi'een were, and all 4 A'immah are unanimous on this point. The person gives 3 talaqs in one gathering, all 3 are done. And today you find that those who follow an Imam, follow things and do things correctly according to the hadith and sunnah, when they also issue talaq in this way, and when they can't find any hope at all, and then they run to some ghair muqallid. And then he'll say to them, no, it's only one talaq. And then they get hope in it. So that's what they do when they can't find anywhere else. They'll go to the deviant ones and get deviant fatwas from them. So, and there's great proof to this. We can go into great proof also on this later on if you want to. There's proof with regards, and their proofs are just baseless more than anything else. So, 3 talaqs given in one gathering equals 3. Not the 3 given equals 1 all of a sudden. 3 is 3. Okay? So these were a few masail with regards talaq. Now when a person divorces his wife just once, he has the option of taking her back. When he takes her back, he still has the option of another 2 divorces. If he divorces her for the second time, he can still take her back. He has one option left. But now if he divorces her 3 times, whether it's separately or whether it's collectively, once 3 talaqs are issued, now he doesn't have the same rights of taking her back as he would if he had just given her 1 or 2 divorces. The ruling then is that she has to go through halala. Halala is wherein the wife, now she has to marry another person, the marriage has to be consummated, and then for some valid reason he divorces her or he passes away. She now completes her iddat. After her iddat, now she can remarry the first husband if they want to get together again. This is through means of halala, and these verses will be coming very soon, which we'll mention in detail then. So this, in brief, was the philosophy of talaq, the purpose of talaq, and the importance of nikah in Islam. So just the way nikah is done in a specific method, in a specific way, talaq also takes place in a specific way. And the verses that I have recited to you, there is quite a bit of detail, etc. to it. And today is one of those nights where I need to depart early. So I've just mentioned to you in sort of a summary with regards to the verses. So now inshallah next week we will do the translation and the tafseer, and especially the various wordings which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in these verses with regards indicating towards talaq should be only given once or twice, the dislike of 3 talaqs. If talaq is given, then the other option of khula, which is there, that will also be mentioned. Khula is wherein the wife herself pays for herself to be divorced. That will also be mentioned in the verses, and also in detail that of halala.